my TikTok feed is all like filled with like women, women that are like this are like, are the reason why men are like that. Men like this are the reason why women are like that. It's like, it's all about these relationship things. It's like people are blaming the other gender for things. And I think it's kind of silly, but like, I see some craziness. There's a guy that wears sunglasses, and I think he's, he's, people like to say like, oh, this guy is the reason why men are starting to be like this, or like why women are starting to be like this because of this woman. And it's not really that. It's like those people are exaggerations of mentalities that have been around for so long. And I love the discussion. I love the discussion that, when men and women are having on TikTok. I think a lot of them are really young people, and they're just or people that are older and they haven't really figured things out. Because we all develop at different ages. Like not all of us are going to understand things in our 20s. Not all of us are going to understand things in our 30s. Some of us get to 50, 60. We still don't understand things. For me, I think what it is, it's not just that like women like guys with money, or like men, only want women for their bodies and stuff like that. I think what it is like there's either people who are healed and who have gone through and done the work on themselves. And by work, I mean like they've either gone to therapy, or they've used some sort of way to re-examine the traumas and things that they've experienced that have shaped the way that they view and the way that they respond to things in the world. Or they've they've gone the traditional route, which to me is like therapy and counseling and all that kind of stuff, right? So like there's people who are healed, people who don't project their traumas onto other people. And there are people who are not healed. Those people are the ones that are all over TikTok. They're the ones that are being so toxic. And even like Karen videos, like the women that treat people terribly. They see everyone else as NPCs. Like they're just like, oh, well, the customer's always right, and blah, 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 right? All those excuses that validate their their weird outlook on life. And it's terrible. But those are people that haven't done the work. They haven't sat through, even like, I would say even, what you watch and what you do in your life is sort of like a projection of where you are mentally. So for me, I think about that and I'm like, TikTok really has me looking at these videos. And there's a man that I used to watch his videos, and and he passed recently, but his videos exposed a lot of women that have unrealistic goals and unrealistic expectations in the men that they want. They just like they're putting themselves on such high of a pedestal, right? And then there's other men, and then he even posts like videos of other men doing the same thing. Like they have these unrealistic ideas, or like they don't take care of themselves, and they expect to have a woman that does take care of themselves. And it's like, well, you don't take care of yourself, so why would somebody else want you that takes care of themselves? They want someone who takes care of themselves too. So I I've seen all these videos, and it's very apparent that they haven't gone through the healing. There's either people who have healed, and there are people who have not healed. And the people who have not healed, they tend to be the loudest in the rooms because they're so insecure about themselves. They're so insecure about who they are. They haven't done any work on themselves. For me, I've done a lot of work. I've gone to counseling. I've gone to therapy. I've gone to psychiatrists, and I've been working on my health. I've been reading a lot of books, tons of books about like childhood trauma, and books about, healing processes. And for me, the biggest one that works for me is called shadow work. Shadow work, if you search for it, is a beautiful way of basically reprogramming experiences from your childhood. And there are good parts of your childhood, obviously, and there are bad parts. But either way, you're reframing the way that those events happen, so that way you can sort of dig and pull out some of those repressed feelings that you have. For instance, if you if you're a perfectionist, it could be something as simple as maybe like your parents didn't, maybe your parents were really strict with you, and they were like, if you don't get an A in this class, or if you don't get A's across the board, or if you don't get the honor roll or whatever, that, we're going to punish you in some sort of way. So like you're constantly on this, you still carry that with you into your adult life, that mentality, because that's what was embedded in your head when you were growing up. So now you're a perfectionist, and anyone that doesn't match the way that you believe things should be done, then all of a sudden, like you become nasty and violent, or, you become mean to them because you're frustrated by them, or you go inward. Instead of being mean to them, you become mean to yourself. Or if, for instance, you didn't have parents that gave you, attention, now you're seeking attention. You're like, I wish, in your head, you're like, I wish I had attention from my parents growing up. And that carries over to people having anxieties and social anxieties and stuff like that. So like you go out into the world and you're like, anyone that gives you attention, all of a sudden you're their friend. And, when you give them too much attention, you're expecting too much attention from them. All of a sudden they pull back, and you're left there thinking, nobody wants me. That's because as you were growing up, you believed, your parents put inside of you something that said that you have to be this, you have to match this and this in order for you to receive attention, love, and all that kind of stuff. Attention, love, and support. So like, unless you're a perfect person, you're not going to get all that. And that bleeds into your, and that gets embedded into your foundation as an adult. And all of a sudden you become this perfectionist. You become this person that will not settle for anything less than what you believe to be 100% the best way to live, or whatever it is. You won't accept them because they're not matching up to what you believe to be as your standard. So there's a lot of stuff like that from your life, and there's subtle things too, like very small things that, but anyway, so the way that you're reacting and interacting with the world is based off of what happened in your childhood. And there are techniques for you to go back and reframe those in your mind, because there's a lot of suppressed feelings about those things, and you have to go back into your subconscious, basically, because they are affecting your subconscious. Like, without you knowing, you all of a sudden get angry at somebody because they did something, and you're like, whoa, what was that? Like, why did I get so angry? Some people, they're not even conscious of being angry at something. They just like are angry, and they're like, yeah, that's just how I am. Well, no, that's not how you were born. You were born perfectly. But through the experiences growing up, that's where all of the things that's where all of the ways that you interact with the world were formed and carried on into adulthood. And if you don't address those things, you become destructive in your life. Not all those things are bad too. Maybe you did get all the attention and all the affection that you needed as a child, but that could screw you up too. Like, you've been pampered for so long, and now you're wondering why the world isn't fair. You're like, I'm doing great. Like, why isn't everyone else being good like me? You can't understand it because other people have, they have issues. So for me personally, I've been doing a lot of this shadow work, and when you look them up, like if you Google up shadow work prompts, it's basically stuff that's like, okay, remember a time in your past, something that sticks out, something could be traumatic, could be good, could be bad, whatever it is. And then you go through a questionnaire. So the first thing is, what happened, as you recollect it. So that way you kind of get all of the memory, your brain starts to bring back all those things. You're not going to remember it if it wasn't something significant. And then you start to ask questions like, how did I feel about that? How did, when I was growing up, how did that affect me? What happened? And then there's other techniques you can do when you're in that space, when you're feeling all those things. You can then say, okay, now that I know what I know, how would I approach that situation? How should I have gone through and made, like, whose fault was it? Like, what was this a fair situation? And you can't make excuses because, there's excuses that people make, like, oh, well, back then, that's how things were done. Oh, my parents were just very traditional. Oh, you know what? Like, we were a Christian family, and so all this, like, judgment was just part of the course. No, like, you can't make excuses. You're an adult now. You have your own, like, understandings of the world now. You don't need to carry on the toxicity from the past. You don't need any more excuses. Now you can say, you know what? That was abuse. That was child abuse. That was, my parents not being in touch with their emotions. They didn't have any way to regulate their emotions. So then, like, parents pulled out the belt, or, like that kind of stuff, right? So that's what shadow work is. And, a lot of counseling, therapy, and that kind of stuff, it's the same thing. So they have you revisit situations. They have you talk it through, and then you come up with a conclusion. And there's many techniques. There's, like, I did a few of them. One was writing a letter to comfort yourself as a child during a situation. Like, if you could go back and write a letter to yourself as a child in a specific moment, what would that letter say that would help comfort you? So that's the kind of stuff you have to do in order to get yourself to a place where you can make beautiful interactions with other people. Otherwise, you're gonna be like these TikTok people complaining about stuff, and like saying toxic things. But in reality, it's just you, like, not healed. And there's a lot of people walking around like that. Like, there's so many people that are walking around just unhealed, just causing, they're just causing problems everywhere, causing wars. And stuff like religion and like that, religion in general is a predatory practice. Like, they created religion so that you could be controlled, so that they can control you without having to control you. It's like, think about it like this, like when you were growing up and your parents told you, that if you don't go to sleep, the boogeyman will get you, right? Something like that. Well, growing up, that that's not real. Like after you, as an adult, that isn't the case. Just the night is, like the darkness is literally just the absence of light. And there's no creatures, at least not any ones that we know about. But you have this belief that was embedded in you that like if you go to sleep, if you don't go to sleep by this time, that the boogeyman will get you. That's the same thing as like saying that if you don't repent for your sins, that you won't be allowed an afterlife, or you will be punished in your afterlife. It's the same thing. It's all just to control you. It's all just to control. It's a way that the rich people use to control everybody. And it does more harm than it does good. And people that are unhealed, they are the primary target of these religions. My brother, one of my older brothers, he passed away a couple years ago, but he was very, very involved in the church, like extremely involved, to the point where like he kicked me out and I was homeless for a while because I didn't go to church enough with him. And I was staying with him for college and he just kicked me out of his house, literally just threw my stuff out. And I was homeless. I didn't have any friends. I didn't know anyone. I just slept outside on the bench. I did what I could. And, I took care of myself. And I got to this point, but my brother was so involved in the church. He believed that what he was doing was right. He believed that he was helping me. He believed all that stuff in his head, that like that's what his belief system gave him and told him. And he thought that I would fold. He thought that I would say, oh, you know what, I will go to church and blah, 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 and I would do all this. But that's not what I did. In fact, what I did was I went and got 2 jobs. I asked my friends if I could store my stuff in their closet. They let me sleep on their couch. I went out. I got my own apartment after a month. I worked so hard to get that. And I went out and did my own thing. Some say he did help me grow in some ways. But also, like, if it were me, like, I would have helped my brother to get out of that situation. I wouldn't have kicked him out. I wouldn't have been the one who kicked him out. I would have been the one who helped. I'd have been like, all right, let's get you some jobs. Let's get you into your own apartment. That's the way I would kick them out. The way I would have kicked any of my brothers out. But no, he thought that he would strong arm me into going to his church by kicking me out and making me beg. But that's not me. And And that's like some of the destructive behavior that comes when you're not healed. And my brother passed away because he died from a meth overdose. He was doing meth and going to church. Like, that's not healing. That is not healing. So unless you start to do that work, then you're going to become a victim of all these things. People go on TikTok, they hear the dumbest things on TikTok and they believe it because they don't educate themselves. I saw a TikTok where there's this cloud. It's like it's like it looked like a flying, it looked like a UFO coming out of the clouds, but it was clouds. Those clouds are called lenticular clouds. It's a lenticular cloud structure. Usually they're above mountains. They sort of wrap around a mountain like a circle. They look like UFOs, but they're not UFOs. And you look in the comments section and people are like, oh, they just out here now. Oh, they just, these UFOs are getting bold. It's like, no, it's not even a UFO. That's a lenticular cloud. And I put that in the comments and no one liked it. I'm just like, really? This is how easy it is to fool these people. But that's what I've been doing recently, is like going back into my life, into my childhood memories and revisiting them as an adult, revisiting what happened in those times and putting to rest finally those repressed feelings, putting those like feelings away and not having to have them sit and affect me. And the reason why you want to do that is because if you don't do that, they affect your decisions. They affect your decision making. They affect the way you feel, the way you respond to things. If you catch your girlfriend cheating on you, like, you could do all kinds of destructive things just because you might hurt her, you might hurt yourself, you might hurt somebody else. All because you chose to be with somebody even though they don't want to be with you, or whatever the reason is. Like, that person wasn't healed, right? Like, that person wasn't healed and you guys continued to interact. And vice versa. It's like, maybe you cheated on the other person. And why would you do that? It's like, why wouldn't you just like break up with the other person? Right? So it's like, there's all kinds of situations you'll put yourself in just because you're not, revisiting those repressed feelings, and those repressed feelings are affecting the decision making that you're going through, and they affect your quality of life. So that's what I've been working on. There's a book that I recommend if you really want to read more about this. It's called The Child in You. It's a beautiful book about it has techniques in there for you to revisit, your past and do what's similar to shadow work. But you could also just Google shadow work prompts for anything. You could do shadow work prompts for addiction. There's you could do shadow work prompts for relationships, if you're having issues with relationships. Those things, and they're questions. They're real life questions. They're real questions that'll really help you. No amount of prayer is going to help you. No amount of goodwill and wishing is going to help you with those things. That's a journey within yourself that you need to do if you want to heal and if you want to have a better experience in this life. And not everyone has the same amount of traumas, and some of them are even good, right? Like some of the experiences you've had growing up are good, and you can revisit them to strengthen yourself. So when you finally get through all of that all those repressed feelings and stuff like that, life becomes a lot better. You become a better person. Your stress levels drop by a lot. You start to understand why. Like for me, I'll give you one, and then I think I'll end this. And I have allergies right now, but so one big one was when I was growing up. My parents, they left me with my aunt and my uncle, and I always felt like I was abandoned by them. Like, I can't believe they just, they left me with their, and my aunt and my uncle, one was I think my aunt was a teacher, my uncle was a bus driver. And so my uncle, like, he would wake me up at like 4 a.m. so that we could go and drive the bus around like 6 o'clock and go pick up kids and take them to school. Right. Like, and I think I was like, I don't know, I was in kindergarten, I think. And, I remember like in that school, like I was there by myself. It was just like, like I felt like I was there by myself because my parents weren't around, and it was just my uncle and my aunt. And there was this kid, and we're like, I don't remember what we were doing, but we got into an argument. We got into a fight, and I was taken to the principal's office, and then that's where the principal like literally screamed at me, and like he did this thing with his hands where he punched his hand really loud, and it echoed. And I remember how loud it was. I remember he was screaming at me, telling me how like I should never fight again and all this and all that. And I just felt it was so unfair because he didn't listen to anything I told him. So then, like, I realized that experience is the reason why I cannot stand having a manager or having anybody above me in terms of like management. I can't have, I really like, that's why I work for myself right now, is because I can't stomach like trying to impress somebody else, because I feel like they're just not going to be fair. And all that experience did, was sitting there affecting me. Like, that's how I viewed leadership, was that it was just people that just, they're going to be unfair. They're not going to judge you correctly. They're going to threaten you and hurt you, and they're evil. When that's not the truth, because I've had tons of good managers and really great leaders in my life. I've met really great leaders. But in the back of my head, I just can't fully trust them. But now that I've sort of figured out where that came from, now I can start to begin to heal from that. So, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff to deal with, and when going back to the original thing about like all these men and women on TikTok blaming each other and blaming the other gender and the other like everything else, right? They're blaming everything, age, all that stuff. Because of that, it's really not the gender, it's really not society. It really is just healed people and hurt people who are still unhealed, people who have not and who may never revisit and heal themselves. Those are the people who are being destructive in this world. Healing yourself is something like, once you do that, you're going to become such a stronger person. You'll become this solid individual, because you will know yourself. That's the whole thing. Is it's not even about healing yourself for other people. It's about digging into yourself and understanding who you are in this life experience. That's all it's all about. once you know who you are, you can do so much more than if you don't. But anyway, I hope you guys have a good day, good night. I hope you guys are out there being safe, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.